Hello, True Health Seeker, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Learn True Health podcast. This interview was a lot of fun. My guest today brings the science and the research and all the evidence to the table when it comes to understanding CBD. Now, the CBD we're talking about today is not from something that is psychotropic. No one gets high, although you feel really good on it. Children can take it. It's safe for babies. It's safe for children. It's safe for adults. It won't show up on a drug test. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about CBD. The CBD we're talking about comes from the hemp plant. I had a lot of questions for him because we've had other guests on the show talk about the benefits of medicinal marijuana compared to hemp, for example. So don't worry, this is not about medicinal marijuana. It's not about a drug that would be illegal. In fact, this is about a legal substance that can be shipped to any state, that can be bought in any store. It's legal, it's safe. And today we're thinking about CBD as a very beautiful herb, a beautiful essence of an herb that will support our nervous system, our immune system. There's so many wonderful things. It works with the brain. It helps the body turn on the healing response. There's so many great things that happen when we incorporate CBD, hemp-based CBD. But the problem is, where do we get it? And how do we know we're getting the right quality? And how should we take it? And how much should we take it? And who should take it? And who shouldn't take it? So all these questions we get into. But what I love is that our guest explains. He pulls back the curtain like the Wizard of Oz and explains how high quality therapeutic CBD from hemp is made, how it's grown, how it's made, how it is processed to be filtered so that they can guarantee that there's no THC in it. Is it healthy? So all these things, because I know there's a lot of companies that have sprouted up in the last few years since medicinal marijuana has become more and more popular. But how do we truly know that we're getting the quality that we want? And so Jay brings all the science and the research to the table, as well as some great results that they're getting. Even one man who had really bad symptoms of Parkinson's, when he started taking this specific kind of CBD, has made a huge difference in his life to cut down the symptoms of Parkinson's and give him his life back. So I thought that was really, really cool. Jay sent me a box of all of his CBD products, and my husband and I have been really enjoying his tincture. It's a concentrated CBD tincture. I notice I feel calm and relaxed, but still very clear-headed and focused on it. So I really am enjoying that. It helps a lot of people with pain and anxiety, as well as, like I said, supports the nervous system and supports the body's ability to get back into a state of relaxation and that healing mode that the body goes in when it shuts off the sympathetic nervous system response of fight or flight. Now, as you listen to this show and you listen to all the great information about CBD, if you want to also try his products, because he has one specifically for sleep, he has one specifically for pain, a cream, and he gave me 2 bottles, and I shared it with some of my friends, and they had really good results. In fact, one of my friends even has something that's a lot like a pain that's like restless leg syndrome would be the closest thing I would describe. And he said he could feel like a cramp coming on, and then he used it and it didn't happen. So he thought that was really neat. But yeah, it helps with back pain. It helps with nerve pain, which is wonderful. My favorite just being the pure tincture. If you're interested in trying any of the products that Jay helps to formulate and create and dispense, then you can go to medterracbd.com. That is going to be in the show notes of today's podcast at Learn True Health. So it's medterracbd.com. And he's giving us a discount. I love it. He's giving us 15% off thank you so much. I love when the guests give us discounts. And the coupon code for that is LTH, as in Learn True Health. So just put LTH in when you purchase any of the products from Medterra. And I'm happy for you to try it. They also want you to email them if you have any questions. Jay talks about that in the interview. So as you're listening and you want to buy any of his products, if you have any questions, reach out to them. They want to help you. They love connecting with all the customers because they're really a company based in service of others. And I love that about Medterra. Well, excellent. Thank you so much for being a listener. Please share this podcast episode with all your friends who are interested in learning more about the power of CBD. Let's help as many people as possible to learn true health. So continue to share this with all your friends and family. Thank you so much for being a listener. Join us in the Facebook group. We're going to be talking about this episode after everyone's listened to it in the Facebook group. And I'd love for us to continue this discussion so we can keep learning from each other. Go to learntruehealth.com/group if you'd like to join the Facebook group. And again, if you'd like to buy any of the CBD products that Jay talks about today, you can go to medterracbd.com and use the coupon code LTH for 15% off. Enjoy today's episode. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 300. Today we're in for a really big treat. We have with us Jay Hartenbach, who's the founder of Medterra. It's a CBD company, and I know that we've had some people on the show before talking about the benefits of cannabis and CBDs. You know, this used to be a controversial topic. It's less and less controversial, especially as many of the states here in the United States have legalized taking CBD and even taking marijuana, both recreationally and for therapeutic reasons. There's entire countries that are legalizing it. So I think it's just a matter of time before they realize it's an herb and we need to use it responsibly, just like alcohol really needs to be used responsibly. Most of the time alcohol is toxic to the human body, and most of the time we're seeing that there's health benefits to using cannabis to treat and help heal the body. So I guess it's still a little bit controversial. However, less and less controversial as people see that it is an herb that can be used responsibly to heal the body. And Jay has founded a company that produces high quality CBD products that can be taken to help relieve anxiety and pain, depression. I'm really looking forward to getting into this today with you, Jay. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on, Ashley. Yeah, really excited as well to discuss CBD and the future of it.
Absolutely. Now, Jay did tell me before we started the interview that he was nervous because this is a big podcast for him to be on. And so he took his CBD for his anxiety. So has it kicked in yet?
It has. It certainly has.
Hey, you know what? I would rather take a natural herb than take a pharmaceutical any day for helping me deal with emotions like anxiety or depression. So good on you for helping a lot of people to find a natural solution to help them navigate this crazy world. Excellent.
Well, appreciate that. You know, I think that's one of the privileges in working in this industry is, you know, obviously the opportunity in that growing market is just really fun, you know, to kind of be a part of. But that, you know, primary benefit or the direct benefit of what we're doing is actually helping people. And, you know, that's something that, you know, we certainly don't take for granted and really gets us out of bed in the morning.
Right. Well, before we get into all the technical and science stuff, which I definitely want to do, Jay, can you tell your story? What led you, like you didn't wake up when you were 7 and go, I'm going to be the founder of a thriving CBD company that helps people to recover their health. So what happened in your life that had you want to do this?
Well, actually, no, I'm just kidding. No, you're exactly right. It was really interesting. And this is one of the things that gets us excited about Medterra is we started it with really a group of friends that had similar interests and skills. And so, you know, looking back early 2017, a good friend of mine that I went to school with had been very involved in the hemp industry at more of kind of the wholesale distribution side. So not really working on retail and what we call finished goods, but more on working with hemp farms in the US as well as abroad, and taking that hemp and the extracted CBD and then supplying it with manufacturers. And through his networking and relationships, started working with a farm that really had kind of taken a different approach to what we had seen at the time in the hemp industry, where you had people that said, look, this 2014 Farm Bill really now is allowing us to grow hemp legally in the United States as part of these research pilot programs, and had kind of started firing up farms, throughout the country, primarily in Colorado, Kentucky, and Oregon. And this new farm had taken an approach and said, look, we're going to focus on compliance. And so they actually had spent a year before they'd even started making sure that they were doing things compliantly and that we're able to scale, as opposed to, I think, going the quicker route. And my good friend, his name's JP Larson, who is the co-founder of Medterra with me, came to me and said, look, I think there's a really interesting opportunity here in, kind of helping on this distribution side. This farm is really good at growing the hemp and extracting the CBD and needs some help, kind of tapping into a network and advertising to respective buyers. At the time, I was working for IBM and doing a very corporate job, which I enjoyed, but it was certainly not in the hemp industry. But I had some experience in online marketing. I'd started an online skincare company when I was in graduate school. So I had some experience there and kind of building out websites and networking and basically trying to drive traffic and interest in various fields. And so took that skill set with obviously his experience in the hemp industry, and we started Medterra with the sole goal at the time of providing various manufacturers with high quality CBD that they could trust from a compliant farm. And finally, that was scalable so that, as demand grew for whatever products that they were creating, they'd be able to rely on us to provide that to them. So we established a partnership with the farm, who goes by the name Gencana, who is, kind of a pioneer in the hemp industry, in early 2017, and really kicked off the relationship from there. And when we started Medterra, it really was, we were working with various manufacturers. We had about 25 clients that we're supplying the raw products to, and that was going well. And what we ended up realizing, though, was family and friends of ours started reaching out to us and saying, it's all well and good, but I really don't want to buy a kilogram of isolate. I'm having this issue. Is there a CBD manufacturer that you could recommend to us? And, certainly some of the clients that we'd been working with had been selling products, but it was, what we kind of realized in looking at the finished good market was, one, a lot of people were really charging a pretty high price for the CBD products that they were selling. And certainly CBD is a lot more expensive than, vitamin C isolate, but, there was a way to, I think, make it a little bit cheaper, especially since we knew what the raw costs were. And the other part was actually just having kind of a scalable, easily accessed CBD retail product. So a lot of people had these kind of janky websites, or they were selling in very select health and wellness stores that were brick and mortar based, and there wasn't really a solid online option for an isolate based CBD product that people could order online and be confident that it was going to ship to them, and all of those things. And this was, kind of mid 2017. So in addition to doing the wholesale business, we said, well, let's start, a Medterra online e-commerce website and actually manufacture our own products. And we shipped our first product in June of 2017. And within 2 months, we were selling in all 50 states and starting to actually get orders in internationally. And, the priority that we had placed as a company was, if we can meet the demands of our customers, which at the time, really were family and friends, and obviously we didn't want to disappoint our family and friends by making it too expensive and providing them a quality that they could actually trust, that we could actually build a solid retail business from there, using the compliant farms and the scalability of the relationships we'd established on the wholesale end of it. And that really was kind of the start in, drinking from the fire hose, so to speak, for me, and kind of getting involved in the hemp industry and working through all of the issues that it was, from working with certain banks, that didn't want to touch CBD because they thought it was, marijuana, or they just simply didn't want to be involved with it, to finding co-packers and people that we could work with to actually bottle and label the finished goods that we were selling. And so it has been quite a journey. It's really exciting, even joining in 2017, just seeing the progress that we've made, as a company, but also as an industry, a year, 18 months down the road, it's just incredible. And, I think one of the reasons that I truly believe that CBD is different than maybe the latest health and craze is we really have focused as just an industry in educating people and making sure that they're understanding what they're getting and the expectations of those products so that people aren't disappointed and when they try something and it doesn't work out as they expected, they kind of write off CBD as something that doesn't work for them.
Now let's clarify a few things. So I had a friend that he makes tinctures out of cannabis plants for children that have seizures, and it works incredibly well. And he said that there's a big difference between hemp plant CBD and getting an actual CBD plant. But so you get your CBD from hemp plants, not from CBD plants. Can you explain that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we look at the cannabis plant, which is, encompasses both marijuana and what we call hemp, so it's that cannabis sativa plant. The distinction that you make between hemp and marijuana is the concentration of THC. So if it has less than 0.3% THC by dry weight, then we consider it hemp. And if it has more than 0.3% THC, then we consider it marijuana. So, if we're looking at it from a genealogy standpoint, they really are from the same family of plants. It's just the actual expression of those genes to how much CBD and how much THC that they are producing. And so that is a very important distinction for people. And we certainly take the approach that, look, a marijuana plant can produce CBD, a hemp plant can produce CBD as well, because what we do is we take a CBD isolate. We one, for a couple different reasons, choose hemp plants to extract because they have a higher CBD concentration. So it's just simply more efficient. And in addition, because of the hemp pilot program that we're under, which allows us to sell nationally and internationally, we can't derive it from cannabis or from marijuana. So if we think of, for example, the state of California, who's rolled out Proposition 64 and has made it legal to consume marijuana recreationally. If you go into a dispensary in California and you say, hey, I'd like a CBD tincture, it has to come from marijuana because a dispensary is selling marijuana products. And we as a CBD company can't sell into a California dispensary. So at the end of the day, you are getting the same compounds, but it's really the ratio of compounds that alters or makes the difference between the plants.
When you derive the CBD from the plants, are you heating it? In any part of the process, is it heated?
Yes. So what we do when we actually harvest the plants, we, at time of harvest, we cut all the plants down. CBD and hemp is kind of a unique thing. So the CBD begins to degrade in the plant, or the plant really just begins to degrade almost immediately after it's cut down. So our target really is within the first 24 hours to have the biomass dried and dehydrated to a very low moisture content. So a hemp plant might have 30% water by weight at time of harvest. By the time that we're dehydrating it, right, so that we can preserve the CBD, it gets down to about 3%. And that happens through a drying process, which actually activates the CBD. So it converts it from a CBDA molecule to CBD. And that is very similar to the process. Obviously, I think people are familiar with marijuana, where it has to be activated. CBD has that CBDA group on it that is removed through heating. And then we have cannabidiol, which is active and ready to be consumed.
Got it. Yeah, because the CBDA form or the THCA form THCA would never. It's not a non-psychotropic, so you could take any kind of cannabis plant with lots of THC in it and juice it and drink the juice, and you're not going to get high, but you would consume cannabinoids. And so that was my question, because if you heat it, isn't there still a small amount of THC that has now been activated?
If you heat a THCA or CBD, yeah. So the process is never perfect, right? So if we ever look at like for example, a CBD distillate, then yeah, if we kind of look at it, there usually is a concentration of CBD, and then there's always a little bit of CBDA. It's a fine line, because at a certain point, the CBD can actually, uh, degrade, and so you don't want to overheat it at such a high temperature for so long that kind of degrade the actual CBD. So by the time it makes it to isolate, though, because you're using chromatography to isolate that specific CBD compound, there's very rarely any actual CBDA. You do see some CBN, which can occur if the CBD is heated for too long, or just CBD sometimes naturally degrades, or not degrades, but just alters form into CBN, which is another cannabinoid.
Sorry, my question is, there's trace amounts of THCA in the plants you get from Gen Canna. Isn't that correct?
So any hemp plant, I have yet to see. Yeah. So Ashley, thank you for following up on that. As far as THC goes and THCA, I have yet to see a hemp plant that is grown and extracted without any concentration of THC. Usually there is some small amount, which is where that law kind of comes in and says anything less than 0.3%. So what we typically, if we look at the extraction process, what we do is we kind of grind down the biomass, put it through our dehydration process, right, to preserve the CBD, but there is THC in there, and as well as CBG and CBC and various other cannabinoids and phytonutrients. We then take that and turn it into crude, which is kind of this really thick oil solution, right? And we do that through a CO2 extraction process. And then we refine that crude into what we call a CBD distillate, which is a very pure form of that oil. And in that CBD distillate, which might have 80%, up to 80% CBD, there is also some THC in there, as well as other cannabinoids. We then take that distillate and run it through a chromatography process to basically strip out everything else but the CBD. And at that point, the compound or the material becomes THC free. But up until that point, there is, yes, THC in any type of CBD distillate that is produced.
Got it. So, but it sounds like, though, when you're removing this tiny amount of THC, you're also removing a lot of other great phytonutrients. Why not keep those?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so we do actually have a product that we're coming out with that somewhat addresses that. For us, it was really kind of looking at the general market, right? And so up until very recently, it was really difficult to say, hey, look, I really want the CBD and the other phytonutrients like the flavonoids and the terpenes in there, but I don't really want the THC. And so while some people, I think, especially in our home state of California, have a different approach to THC, a lot of the country, and then when we look internationally, want CBD but don't necessarily want to have the risk of THC. And that can be for a multitude of reasons. One, there are certain products that you take that are CBD, hemp-based products that would actually cause you to fail a drug test, right? And so if you're a government employee in the United States, that alone would disqualify you and be a potential issue. We know from clinical research done on CBD that an CBD isolate by itself can be therapeutically effective, right? And so, yes, the other compounds in the hemp plant certainly are not hurting, but the presence of THC kind of makes it a non-starter for a large part of the population, which is why we said, look, we're going to take the initial approach of making a CBD isolate-based product so that, like you said, there's some other great things that we'd be missing out on, but the consumers of Medterra products know that they wouldn't fail a drug test and wouldn't have any concern of THC. And so that was just a decision we made as a company. With that being said, we recognize that a lot of the community does want that whole plant extract, right? They want the flavonoids and the terpenes. So we started working with another lab that took that CBD distillate oil that we were just referring to, and they've actually developed a novel technique where they are able to remove the THC but keep everything else in there. And there have been studies that have shown the THC and the CBD can interact, but this is at least a step in the right direction to say, hey, look, we can offer you a somewhat full spectrum offering where you can get those phytonutrients that you're referring to and still not have the concern of failing a drug test due to the THC compound being present.
Now, what about simply doing a cold extraction, and then you have CBDA and THCA? And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you don't fail a drug test if it's CBDA. Is that correct?
So the CBDA and the THCA can remain in those states. The one thing, and I will totally admit to this, I am not aware of, the effects of a CBDA compound versus a CBD compound, right? Most of the clinical research, and I tend to refer to clinical research a fair amount. My background is, biomedical engineering by study, and so reading countless research papers and making sure that at least what we're doing has some backing by science. I haven't seen a clinical research paper that talks about the effectiveness of a CBDA and a THCA. The one thing I will say, another way to activate both of those cannabinoids is from actually stomach acid, right? So, you might have heard of pets that may have eaten some of the THC flowers actually getting high, whereas a human would not. And the reason is they have incredibly strong stomach acid that actually can naturally activate it. Humans, their stomach isn't capable of, I think, converting it or activating it as strongly as our furry friends are, but there is still a risk that it can be activated and that THC would go active in the bloodstream. And what the drug test looks for is actually the metabolite of THC. It's not the THC compound, it's the processed THC molecule that our body does after it's been kind of integrated into our system.
Got it. Now you you mentioned therapeutic effects of your extracts. I'd love to hear, what are the therapeutic effects? What are some of the reasons? I know the obvious ones we've already mentioned, which is like anxiety, maybe insomnia, depression, pain. What other therapeutic effects are people reporting after using your CBD extracts?
Absolutely. And the one thing I just will say, because of where the FDA stands on it, as a company, because we're not registered for those treatments, we can't specifically say, a Medterra CBD product has this effect. Now, we've gotten a fair amount of anecdotal reports, and we certainly know that CBD as a compound can be very effective in these regards. So that's just the one disclaimer to make. But right. In using CBD, the reports have been astounding, right? So if we look at just kind of the two mechanisms of action that CBD has, then understanding the potential disease states that it can help, starts making a lot of sense. So CBD, we know, is a very strong anti-inflammatory, right? And it also has effect on neurological activity with the CB1 and CB2 receptors in the brain, and potentially the ability to actually modulate serotonin levels. So just looking from an inflammatory standpoint or an inflammation standpoint, most of the diseases, over 50% of the diseases that humans are afflicted with, have some tie into inflammation. So the easy ones, we're talking about arthritis, right? Sore muscles, sore joints, but it also kind of touches into GI issues, right? So Crohn's disease, where we've got an autoimmune response that's also creating inflammation in the stomach. That, by CBD helping to reduce the inflammation, for example, the neutrophil activity, which is a very strong, the neutrophil activity, if it's overexpressed, creates these cytokines that then generate significant amounts of inflammation. And CBD has now been proved to regulate neutrophil activity, which is why we believe it helps so much with arthritis. So that and alone, you touch on a lot of disease states. And then from a neurological activity, they believe that CBD is able to help with anxiety because it interacts with that CB1 receptor, which will then regulate the serotonin levels in the brain. We know from research that low serotonin levels can actually be a trigger of anxiety. So while they don't know the exact mechanism as to why CBD can be helpful with anxiety, these are the reasons that they believe it can be helping because of that CB1 serotonin modulation.
It's so interesting, serotonin and dopamine, these neurochemicals that we so rely on to feel normal. A lot of our serotonin is made in our gut. And so when we have that, there really is that mind-body connection and that brain-gut connection. When we have, our gut is out of balance, either through, like you said, inflammation, through diet and lifestyle, then our serotonin production is disrupted, and that can cause restlessness and anxiety and irritability, and then the dopamine, which is associated. Dopamine and serotonin go together, and dopamine is that pleasure. We're always seeking that dopamine response through pleasurable activities, but not enough dopamine, and we might fall into addiction. If we don't have a dopamine regulated, not enough serotonin, and we might fall into depression. So those two things go together. But we've got these brain receptors that you keep mentioning, and I always find it fascinating. It always freaks me out that we have receptors in the brain for the cannabinoids. Like, this is how close we are, connected we are with the planet, that there are plants that have properties that can bind to receptors on our brain. Like, we really are of the earth and from the earth. Isn't it just so amazing? Can you talk a bit about the brain receptors and how our brain works with the cannabinoids, the properties in hemp and cannabis?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm right there with you. It's kind of actually, I don't know if crazy is the right word, but it is a little mind blowing. So if we think of, kind of the human anatomy and biology and what we know about the body, a lot of the significant discoveries about the body, happened a very long time ago, right? And when we look at the discovery of the endocannabinoid system, which was in the early 90s, in time, in kind of the perspective of medical research, it's like a blink of an eye, right? And that's part of, I think a lot of people ask, they say, how do we not understand better on how these compounds are working in the body? Well, it wasn't very long ago that we actually discovered that there were these receptors. And so, just even more interesting, we know that there's a CB1 and a CB2 receptor. Apparently, they're starting to find research that suggests that there's a CB3 receptor. And that's, not even proven yet. So you're exactly right. And, I think the timing of these discoveries and just the understanding of our bodies goes perfectly hand in hand with, I think, the general push in our society to be healthier and kind of look at more of a whole plant health and also just kind of whole body wellness, as opposed to treating specific acute symptoms of diseases and kind of just looking for that overall wellness, which, is really exciting for us, because that's, it's great for the industry that we're, providing maybe a natural remedy for something that would have been otherwise artificially treated, but also it's just leading to, I think, just healthier and happier people, where preventative medicine is taking place over reactive medicine. And so talking about the CB1 and CB2 receptors, one of the things I don't think a lot of people know is our body actually produces cannabinoids internally. So, for example, CBD can be found in high concentrations in breast milk, and that, I think, throws a lot of people off, because they had this idea. One, I think there's that marijuana stigmatism that this is improper, it's not right for the body, and they lump THC and CBD together. And when they find out that actually some of these compounds are being produced internally, I think that kind of changes some of their perspective. The compounds that we look at, in hemp versus what the body produces and the way that we differentiate them is, one is an endocannabinoid, right? So that's where the endocannabinoid system comes from. So if we produce it internally, right, then we have an endocannabinoid. If we consume it orally or apply it topically from a hemp plant, those are what we call phytocannabinoids. And so that's just the easy way to distinguish the two. What research is suggesting is that potentially low concentrations of omega-3s can actually inhibit the body producing, CBD and the other cannabinoids that interact with our endocannabinoid system, which is where the phytocannabinoid supplementation actually can aid us. Because I think a lot of people then say, okay, if your body can produce it internally, then why would I ever need to take any externally? And, I think the realization, just like some people have trouble sleeping, or their just general system's a little out of whack, right? The life that we live today and our diets and our sleep cycles and all of those other stressors that come into play, I think, are very different than how our bodies evolved. And so that's where it helps to bring in maybe some external help with these phytocannabinoids. And that's why people see such a significant response in an anxiety or arthritic issue.
What you just said, I've got to back up. You said that when the person basically said when a person is deficient in omega-3, right, or omegas, they're deficient in their EFAs, essential fatty acids, that then their body's not producing its own CBD. The body naturally produces CBD, but if it's deficient in EFAs, then it can't do that. So then the body becomes deficient in CBDs as a result.
That's right, and that is what some of the research is pointing to. I don't know if that is has been fully confirmed, but yes, the research paper that I was reading suggested that they had looked at individuals that had a high omega-3 diet and the levels of endocannabinoids, and then they, took a group of individuals that had been, lower, more on that kind of Western diet, right, which was much higher than in omega-6s, and they were seeing deficiencies there, and it was statistically significant, because I think that's the natural progression of it is, if our body has this endocannabinoid system that is reliant on these cannabinoids to activate these CB1 and CB2 receptors, which obviously have some type of hormonal cascade tied to them. If you're feeling anxious, right, and you're not getting the right amount of serotonin modulation, then that CB1 and CB2 receptor may not actually be working as intended, and they're a little out of whack. And okay, so if they're out of whack, then why is that? Well, the body's not producing enough CBD or other cannabinoid, as part of just the body. And that's when you kind of start realizing that we have obviously this higher level of intelligence, but we're subjected to compounds in our body, and it really just kind of boils down to the chemistry. It's really, really fascinating. And so I think that's just the general approach to, CBD and hemp is, look, let's not make this something where it has to be a cure-all for everything. But if we can understand from a scientific standpoint where it really can be helpful, then we can actually move forward and take this thing out of anecdotally, or, my cousin, knew this guy that would give us this stuff that wasn't legal. Now that it's being brought into the light of day where it actually can be studied by real professionals, we're going to start seeing, I think, a very rapid increase in discoveries and really getting to the roots of what makes it really effective and where it really shouldn't be used.
So if someone is deficient in essential fatty acids, their body is going to demonstrate other issues because the body uses essential fatty acids to make hormones, sex hormones and stress hormones, to make something like making your eyes not be dry. Like dry eyes can be an EFA deficiency. Asthma can be a significant EFA deficiency. The breakdown of your skin, so you end up with psoriasis or some kind of skin issue, can be an EFA deficiency. Even your neurology, so your brain, 70% of the weight of the white matter of your brain is fat. And so if we're deficient in healthy fats, we could be affected on a hormone level, on a brain level, a neurological level. It just goes on and on. And of course, now what we're discovering is what you're saying is that it's disrupting the endocannabinoid system, because the body simply cannot make, just like it cannot make enough of the sex hormones or stress hormones if we don't have enough of the healthy fats. You're saying it also cannot make enough of its own, the body cannot make enough of its own endocannabinoids. And so when someone takes the supplement, the CBD supplement, and they start getting results, like they go, oh my gosh, my anxiety is going away, or oh my gosh, this and that is going away. Isn't it pointing to an EFA deficiency?
Well, I think that, potentially, and I would say the one thing that I've learned in human biology is that rarely disease states are caused by a singular, issue or imbalance, right? And, I think the body not having omega-3s, at a sufficient level certainly can impact the cannabinoid production internally. But, I think it would be something for us to take a look at and say, what else is causing the CBD production? Because, I think if from an anxiety standpoint, if it really was just supplementing, for example, fish oils, and people started noticing their anxiety going away purely, from that, then we might have made that discovery, or we might have kind of learned about that a little bit earlier. And so I'm sure there's a multitude of reasons as to why, but I think it just shows, specific to that research, that I think the point that you're talking about, this whole gut brain, and then I when I was starting my skincare company, the whole gut brain skin axis is how they were referring to it, which is fascinating to me, because I think for the longest time we never really looked at our, when I say longest time, historically looked at our diets as truly a source of medicine, or kind of staying well, right? That was always kind of shelved, and that's been, I think, the most recent progression in overall health. You see the rise in veganism, or at least just healthier eating, and that's kind of transforming how we look at just overall wellness. So, to your point, Ashley, absolutely. I think that could point to an omega-3 deficiency, but I think there's probably other reasons as well, as to that system just being out of balance, where not just the cannabinoids, but maybe the terpenes and the flavonoids with that CB1 and CB2 receptor can really start making changes in our system and getting a little bit more on track.
Well, like I said, I'm a big fan of herbal medicine. I consider this herbal medicine. I'd like to see. I'm looking forward to the products you come out with in the future that are whole plant, because I know the benefits of all the compounds in hemp or cannabis, versus just CBD. But for someone to just take CBD alone, which is what you sell, pure, a pure form, and to get great results is wonderful. I'm very excited, because like I said, I'd rather someone, instead of going on an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety, or maybe some kind of pharmaceutical sleep aid, which has so many side effects and it's poison, it harms the body. If they could find a natural plant-based solution to help them feel calm or happy, or just navigate this world better and bring better quality of life, then all the power to them, because they're not poisoning their body anymore. Speaking of which, comparing this to a pharmaceutical, are there any side effects? Is there toxicity? Can you overdose? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, yeah, I think that needs to be asked by everyone that's looking at trying, whether it's a herbal supplement or, if a pharmaceutical, if that's what, they're leaning towards, is, yeah, you need to understand both the good and the bad. I think the one downside to, well, not one downside, but, I think is people are looking for instant gratification, and people essentially, like to trust what they're hearing if it comes from an accredited source. And so, yeah, understanding the side effects are really important. Fortunately, with CBD, they've done a fair amount of toxicity studies, to the point where people were taking 1,500 milligrams of CBD in a single serving, which would be about 15 times stronger than any serving that we would offer in one of our retail products. And they found no acute and really no long-term side effects, other than they actually found some potential for headaches at a really, really high level of concentration, as well as a dry mouth. And so they don't necessarily know why that's happening, but from an acute standpoint of potentially taking too much, specific to CBD and CBD only, there really haven't been any larger concerns. And that's, I think the great thing when you're talking about, hey, trying this as an alternative to a pharmaceutical, look, at least, take a look at this and have that discussion with your doctor. If anything, if it doesn't work out, you may have cost yourself some time, but, you're giving your body at least a healthier shot with really no significant side effects, to find maybe a treatment for whatever issue that you're having, before going to something that we know there are some pretty significant side effects of.
What is, I guess I still don't have clarity around it. What is endocannabinoid system? What is it? Are endocannabinoids, like you said, the body produces them. They're also in hemp, and so it's naturally occurring in these plants, but it's also our body makes them. So it's part of our neurology, right? It's part of the nervous system to have these chemicals bind to the receptors in the brain. Is are they precursors to hormones, or do they stimulate the body and tell the body to do certain things with hormones, or are they themselves hormones?
Yes, so they're not hormones themselves. They're more of the precursor to that hormonal cascade that gets set off, right? And so, just like, for example, if we look at the CB1 receptor and how it's regulating potential serotonin levels in the brain, that is where it comes in. The CB1 receptor obviously binding with CBD and then setting off a cascade within the nervous system. And it's not just in the brain. So the endocannabinoid system is found throughout the body. And it's just, yes, a series of receptors that signal and basically create these responses within the nervous system for, depending on what amount of cannabinoid is detected, as well as where in the body it's detected. So, if we look at, for example, a topical CBD cream, and I know there's been some concerns that CBD is not able to penetrate the skin. We actually have clinical research that we're doing right now that would dictate otherwise. Applying that locally seems to activate, obviously, the CB1 and CB2 receptors in that specific area, which is where you can activate maybe a muscle relaxation. Or, for example, we know that CBD can be effective with psoriasis. That is one that we certainly don't know the mechanism of action for, but applying that topically seems to be much more effective than taking it orally and having it more of a systemic level. So these receptors throughout the body are no different than other nervous system components that we have that are looking for specific proteins or compounds, and then obviously engaging in kind of activity after these sequences engaged.
That's very interesting that applying it topically. So the body can absorb it. Does it absorb it into the bloodstream if you put it topically? Does it absorb it into the lymph system? How does it get through the skin and into the body?
Yeah, that exactly. Yeah. So we believe that it's entering actually into the bloodstream and into the muscles, as well as just spreading throughout the dermis, right? So if we look at something like psoriasis and applying that locally, right, that's not penetrating beneath the skin. That's something at the skin level. But we know that it is able to reduce inflammation applied topically in muscles, or at least that's the research that we're seeing right now. So that would, obviously set off, or lead us to believe that it is penetrating. And that's, I think, another thing is, if we look at the CB1 and CB2 receptors, the CBD itself is not necessarily causing the reduction in inflammation, but it's interacting with those receptors, and those receptors are throughout the entire body. And so, it doesn't necessarily have to penetrate all the way into the muscle, but if it interacts with a CB1 or a CB2 receptor, located near the muscle, that might actually trigger the release of an anti-inflammatory compound within the body to relieve that soreness or maybe that inflammation in the joint.
Wow, cool. Are there any other known plants on this planet that contain CBD?
I saw a really fascinating article, and I believe that I don't know if they had genetically modified it, but I believe that CBD was present in, I believe it was barley. And so they were looking at, using barley as a way to collect CBD. And I don't think that went very far, but I had heard that. Hemp is, I think, just when you're looking at efficiency. And so for us, especially if we're working with the isolate or even the distillate, the THC free distillate, to us, it's the hemp plant is important, right? Because it has, these other phytonutrients that might be more concentrated than other plants. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to get to is these cannabinoids. And so, we're not opposed to, getting there by other means. It's just that hemp is the most efficient way to do that at a large scale. That I did hear about. So like I said, I heard about barley, and then I also heard about another. It was like an essential oil that also seemed to interact with. It wasn't cannabidiol, but it was another plant that seemed to react with the CB1 and CB2 receptor. And I think what's happened, or what had happened, was hemp, I think, being closely tied to marijuana. If we look all the way back to the 1937 marijuana tax reform, I believe it was Tax Act, where it outlawed or basically made it economically not viable to grow marijuana or hemp. Hemp being kind of lumped in with that category, not being accessible really until 2014 domestically, caused a lot of people to say, hey, look, these compounds can be very effective. What other ways can we get there? Because hemp's no longer available. Now with 2014 enacting these research pilot programs, and now in 2018, us looking at the permanent legalization of hemp, I think these alternative methods, because they're not nearly as efficient, will probably go to the wayside because hemp really seems to be the best way of getting CBD and the other cannabinoids.
For those who don't know the history, the little fun history that America's gone through with hemp, so that we can understand why the what do they call it? The marijuana madness, or what was it? Where people were like freaking out. The propaganda for generations, that reefer madness, that was it. Gosh, reefer madness. And it was bad and evil and wrong and the devil. And now I understand that like anyone could use pot as an addiction, just like anyone could use alcohol as an addiction. And both in the state that I live in are legal. Yeah, you're 21, you can go buy pot, or you can go buy alcohol, and you can harm you can harm your life, right? So you can go down a negative path in that sense. But you could also do that with food. You could also do that with a lot of things in life. I'm talking about all the benefits of hemp being something that you can't get high from, that we used to be able to make clothes. I mean, we can still make clothing, but back then it was that you could make the sails for the sailboats, the ropes for the sailboats. We made our clothing with it. You can make food out of it. You can make houses out of it. Like, they have figured out so many ways. Because it's a weed, it grows so fast that we could replace a lot of the lumber industry and even the paper industry with hemp successfully. It's more economical. It's healthier for the environment. Like, there's so many reasons why it would have been beneficial for us to continue to use hemp after the 30s, and yet they shut it down because of one very wealthy man wanted to continue making money from his newspapers and from the foresting industry, and didn't want them to make paper from the hemp industry, because they had just discovered a way to successfully make paper from hemp. And this man would have lost a lot of money because he had just bought giant forests. I think it was in Mexico. And so I don't know if you know this story, if you want to share a bit about the history so that people understand, because I think that some people are going, well, I grew up being told that hemp and cannabis was bad, and just was as bad as cocaine. I remember I was in I think it was grade 7, and they had this drug awareness talk, and they lumped pot in with heroin. It's as bad as heroin. Like, you're going to overdose and die if you smoke a reefer. And so they really made us feel like this is all very taboo, So even CBD, I feel like some people still are like, well, is this okay? Like, one of my friends on Facebook, she's a nursing mother with a lot of anxiety, and she's brought this question up. She's like, I'm interested in taking a CBD supplement, but I'm really concerned. Is this safe for me? Is it safer while I'm breastfeeding? Am I going to get high? And even though it's legal here, she's still really afraid of it, because we were raised to think this is a street drug that's dangerous, and you can overdose and die from it. So if you just wouldn't mind going through the history a little bit, so that people understand that we really have been manipulated, that there was a propaganda around this, and that this crop is incredibly beneficial, and that now that finally it's more legal, we can begin to use it in all the possible ways, that like replacing cutting down lumber, replacing making food, making these medicines, making clothing. So I'd love for you to get into that a little bit, because when people understand the history, they start to realize, wow, that's why when I grew up, they made it seem so evil.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you did a fantastic job touching on it, especially in the 1930s. So, hemp, as it was, kind of becoming a more and more part or larger part of just the U.S. economy, was this, not one-stop shop, but it really did. It provided a multitude of benefits, much beyond just medicinal qualities of the flower, right? So you had these hemp stalks that were used in textiles, but if treated the right way, people were creating what they were referring to as hempcrete, right? So you could use it in building materials. It was fully sustainable, and it posed a significant threat to pre-established industries. And so, if we look at the legislature and just trying to stay as high level as possible, but you know, unfortunately, I think American politics and just larger politics in general sometimes get a little too close with external business interests, especially business interests that are pre-existing. And so
Well said.
the marijuana tax reform was really a way, I think, one, to lump hemp in with marijuana, even though it was known at that time that, okay, so if you've got marijuana and there are these psychoactive effects with it, hemp is a very different thing. And when consumed orally, does not have those effects. It was really lumped together. And I think part of it was right. So you had business interests that stood to lose a lot from a growing textile industry with hemp, all the ropes and sales, and even to the point that after hemp was outlawed, they made special provisions, and I believe World War I and World War II, that they would use hemp for ropes because there wasn't anything else like it at the time that was effective. And so the U.S. government even admitted that and said, hey, look, we can use hemp for these things, even though it really is outlawed. And so you've got this really up and coming industry that I think was derailed by larger kind of corporate interest in the U.S. And on top of that, at the time, I believe from what I've read that there was a larger and incoming population of immigrants that were potentially threatening lower kind of income jobs, which is an issue that America seems to continually face on how to kind of deal and progress with that. And there was an association with marijuana and these immigrants, and that's where the propaganda really began. And you've got a very concerned public about their futures and if they lose their jobs, as well as larger corporate interests concerned about hemp potentially taking their income. And it kind of created this perfect storm where I think it was relatively easy to pass through in Congress and just kind of wipe the map of it. And as time progressed, right, so for example, in World War II, where you get special provisions made by the U.S. government to use hemp, it, kind of, something I think that is that effective on so many levels can only be outlawed for so long. And so as the years progressed, right, we have this kind of resurgence trying to pop up, especially with hemp. And then you've got Ronald Reagan then now coming in. And I think that really was just a platform for him to stand on where the real reefer madness and, this war on drugs was really kicked off, and marijuana now gets brought into it. And because hemp and marijuana have been so largely out of really the spotlight, and I think understanding, where industrial hemp really did have a place, it was really easy for people to kind of confuse the two and continue to lump that back in. And, at the end of the day, we have to realize and I think acknowledge that, political decisions have to have some foundation in economics, right? And so now you've got this resurgence of hemp because I think there was a realization that, look, the general public with this entire medical marijuana reform in the United States happening, and you've got senators from Kentucky saying, look, I can't go to my state and say, hey, medical marijuana is the way forward for us, right? Just based on, the demographics of Kentucky and their stance on that. But hemp is another story, right? Hemp has all these uses that we seem to quickly forgot about in the 30s, and let's bring it back and let's get the benefit of the income, the tax revenue from these new industries. Let's create the jobs. And if we're smart and we can educate the public on the differences between marijuana and hemp, then we might actually be able to pass this through at a federal level, which is what they were able to do in 2014. And, it is fascinating and it's sad because this should have happened much sooner, but, I think we're all fortunate that at least this is happening. And, I think there's two very rare things that are happening with hemp reform in the United States. The first is it's very difficult, it's hard to find examples of, politicians en masse coming out and admitting that they might have got this wrong, right? And we're seeing that with politicians recognizing that outlawing and banning hemp in the 1930s was the wrong decision for the United States. And the second thing that you're realizing or seeing with this that I think is relatively rare in today's political atmosphere is this bipartisanship that has really ushered hemp back into the spotlight. It's very rare for Mitch McConnell, who is a very proud and aggressive Republican senator from Kentucky, also agreeing with the very Democratic leaning Chuck Schumer from New York, right? And hemp is the one thing that everyone seems to be on the same page. And so, as much as there's negativity in the past and so many wrongs that need to be corrected, and people that lost out on jobs, opportunities, and were just poorly treated based on their affiliation with hemp and marijuana, the positive that at least we can get from it is that everyone, I think, is on board and taking the right steps and making hemp permanently legal, and recognizing, you see at the FDA level with Epidiolex, that hemp is and CBD has a medicinal benefit, right? And this whole there's no medicinal value and it's the same as heroin has now been reversed because the FDA has come out and admitted that there actually is a medicinal benefit, and therefore CBD can't be considered a Schedule 1 drug because the FDA has approved a drug containing CBD in it. So it is fascinating if you really dive into what has happened and what it took to basically go from it being a thriving industry in the 30s to wiping it off the map, and then the activists that have basically worked tirelessly for the last 80 years to bring it back into the spotlight. Kudos to them first and foremost. And the future for hemp is bright, and hopefully we're smart enough not to make the mistakes of the past and continue to allow that industry to expand, because it is helping so many people.
I like that you brought up the FDA. They see the medicinal benefits of products like yours, and they want to get on board. But the problem with patents is it needs to be man-made, needs to be synthetic. I think it was about 2 years ago that, or maybe 2.5 years ago, somewhere around there, that there was a trial done. I think it was in France, and someone died in the trial when the pharmaceutical companies were testing their synthetic, CBD, their synthetic. I'm actually not quite sure if it was CBD or just some cannabinoids, synthetic cannabinoids. But that halted their program pretty quickly. Can you talk a bit about the synthetic FDA approved drugs versus what you sell?
Yes, absolutely. So, from a biochemistry standpoint, I think CBD, whether it's derived synthetically or not, I think could potentially have it. Now, I think you can go down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but from a quantum mechanics standpoint, it may appear that those two compounds are actually very different and behave from a natural and synthetic standpoint. We have seen that in the industry. There is definitely an increase in synthetic production because it is significantly cheaper, but it appears as though that it doesn't have the same effects as a naturally derived CBD compound. With Epidiolex, though, you did see obviously some synthetic CBD being used and having some clinical efficacy. But at this time, I think the larger public and what we're pushing from a clinical research standpoint is truly hemp-derived CBD. One, I think partly because that natural compound doesn't necessarily have the risks of maybe a synthetically derived compound, because one, it's so new, and I don't know if everyone has the exact science as to how to produce it synthetically in a safe manner without potentially jeopardizing someone's health. Whereas we know from a hemp compound, what we're actually getting and what's being produced naturally. The results with Epidiolex, though, I think even though obviously having some ties to synthetically derived CBD was certainly a step forward for the industry, because of the fact that you do, like you said, the FDA acknowledging that there is some medicinal benefit of CBD, and opening kind of the landscape for research in identifying other specific disease states and potentially pharmaceutical grade treatments where CBD can be important. Now, our standpoint is that the CBD should, like I said, behave the same. So it was very great for Epidiolex to do that, but I think the public also recognizes that I can buy this online, and that's where I think it becomes really important for the consumers to understand where they're buying their CBD from, and making sure that it is one sourced from a plant and domestically in the United States. And anyone that's actually looking to acquire CBD should be very, forthright in asking that manufacturer, that producer, okay, where does the CBD come from? Can you show me a certificate of analysis confirming that there's CBD in this, and that there's no harmful contaminants or solvents in it or heavy metals? Because as the awareness is gained of CBD just in the general public, I think there's always going to be those bad actors that are trying to take advantage of uneducated consumers.
Let's talk about that. So, do you test? It's common in the supplement industry to do skip batch testing. So to test every second batch that comes in, do you test every batch, every second batch? Do you make your findings public, or can someone email you guys and ask for your findings? Let's talk about the quality and the testing to make sure that your product is pure and, like you said, free of solvents and heavy metals.
Yeah, absolutely. So we test we'll test every batch, and we actually test at multiple levels. And part of it is just us trying to adhere to the regulations, but it also obviously has the benefit of making sure that every stage of the process we can have a test go back. So in the event that anything ever needed to be retested or re-examined, we'd at least have that prior test. And so the first place that we do the tests is at the plant level. So right now, Medterra has fields in Kentucky that are dedicated to Medterra only. We don't own the fields, but we work with the farmers, and we basically lease out the land for them to cultivate these hemp plants. So we'll test the hemp plants first because of the farm bill. We need to test the plants to make sure that they're not going above that 0.3% THC level. So we got to make sure that we're growing hemp and that we're not growing marijuana. But in that test, we also will test to make sure that there's no heavy metal contamination. Hemp and just cannabis plants in general have historically been used to clean the soil. And the reason is because they're so good at absorbing nutrients in around them versus, a plant like tobacco, which typically has to be turned on a periodic basis because it actually can damage the soil around it. So that is a great thing for hemp, but it can be an unfortunate thing if the soil around it is not very healthy. So the first thing is we just make sure that there's no contamination. As part of our regulations, we actually can't grow with any pesticides. So we have to make sure that there's no pesticide contamination from nearby agriculture. Then we make sure that there's no heavy metals and that the CBD and THC ratio is proper in the plant. The second part that we test is actually at the isolate level. So after the raw isolate is produced through our extraction process, we make sure, one, that there's no THC because we're selling a THC-free product, but also that there's no residual solvents from any of the extraction and that no heavy metals were concentrated in that actual production of isolate. And just to kind of confirm the pre-existing plant studies that we had completed. The third and final test is at the batch level. So every time we get in a new batch of finished good products, whether it's tinctures, our topical cream, gel capsules, whatever it may be, we then take those and test them individually. One, to make sure that there was no cross-contamination whatsoever, but also to make sure that the dosing that we're claiming on the bottle matches or exceeds what's actually in the product, right? And so that really is all the testing we do. And then as far as transparency, we do post the test results on our website. But if anyone, for example, says, hey, I've got this batch, you just look at the bottom of the bottle, they would email our customer service or our support, and then we would send them the corresponding COA. So we try to be as transparent as possible. We recognize that some people don't necessarily understand what they're looking at in a COA. So, we try and, put it next to, for example, the product on sale for the website. But if anyone wants the really detailed, in-depth COA, then they can reach out to us and we provide it, hopefully that same day or the next day.
That's really cool. It's interesting. So you wait till the final product to test for the levels. What if an entire batch doesn't have enough CBD in it? Does that ever happen?
Well, so the manufacturer, when they take it, they do their own test, and they'll make sure, for example, like the tincture oil, our 3,000 milligram tincture oil is 10% CBD by weight, right? So there's 100 milligrams per serving. Before that goes and gets filled individually, then we will test it. But generally that is spot on. So we'll just do the test ourselves. It is valuable to get that test to correspond. We have yet to have a batch that is under tested. And so we're confident testing at our level. And in the event that it doesn't test out, then we would return that to the manufacturer that's taking our CBD and bottling it.
Right. Slap them on the wrist.
Yeah, it's an expensive mistake to make.
Right.
So, that's one thing. But at the end of the day, we like to have control of the testing, right? We want to, our name's on it. If this is a product that we're selling, then we want those test results delivered directly to us without any risk of interference.
You had mentioned that Gen Canna Farm, the farm that you have this agreement with, does not spray pesticides, so it's organic.
So that's an interesting thing. There is no organic certified hemp or CBD in the US, and that's partly tied to obviously it existing in a research pilot program and not being able to be USDA organic certified. We follow every tenet that would allow us to be organic certified, but we're not formally organic certified,
So you're
though we
like
expect that
organic
to change in the
uncertified.
coming months.
You're organic uncertified.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, it's fine. I have organic uncertified in my backyard. I got a 50-foot by 25-foot garden, and I grow my organic uncertified vegetables, and I'm happy with that.
That's
So
great.
yeah, so that's all I really wanted to know, because I would just hate for you to make a concentrate of something with glyphosate in it. Um,
Yes.
Now, you said it's a compliant farm. Does that mean compliancy with the government, with regulatory bodies, or compliant as in they grow it correctly, or both?
Yeah, so all of the above, but the compliant that I was referring to was with the government body. So in 2014, when they established, so Section 7606 of the Agricultural Act of 2014, or the 2014 Farm Bill, as it's kind of more commonly referred to, established these hemp research pilot programs. And within the pilot program, to grow hemp and extract the CBD, you had to follow certain guidelines. One, you had to be aligned with a nonprofit or university. So, for example, our farm works with the University of Kentucky. And as part of that, too, they laid out very specific agricultural guidelines. And the Kentucky Department of Agriculture actually expanded on that even further. And so the Kentucky Department of Agriculture outlined, how you could grow it and in which ways you could grow it, and pesticides were not allowed. So we have to grow it naturally, and we can't use any kind of synthetic pesticides, or I think you're talking about glyphosate, any of that. And it's one of those things where I think that everyone wins from it. We don't, I don't think we would do it if we had a choice or not had a choice, but as part of the licensing that we have to grow it a certain way. Otherwise, we lose the ability to grow the hemp, which kind of invalidates everything we're doing. Obviously, there is a social benefit and a good of doing it in a natural way. When we extract it into pure isolate, in the event that maybe some contamination from another farm occurred, there wouldn't be a concern, because we really do pull out the pure CBD isolate. But I think as a company, we certainly recognize every action that we have has a larger impact in just the world. And so, loading up fields with pesticides just doesn't feel like the right thing to do, whether it was required or not required by the government.
Very nice. And you'd mentioned you think that in the coming months that organic certification will become available for hemp farms.
I don't know. That was what I would hope, right? As everything kind of passes. I know that the government tends to work slower on certain things, and so if it's a couple months or a year or however long, I do know that there's a huge consumer demand for things to be certified organic, because that's I think people put a lot of trust in that, and so there should be a fair amount of pressure, but it's something that at least I know is in the coming future. It may not be immediately available, but I would expect to happen relatively sooner than later.
Is there anything that you could encourage us to do on a government level to help pass that? Should we go to our local representatives or write our senators? What would you recommend we do to help the hemp industry to gain organic certification? Because then that would be that extra level of it's solidifying it as our future, and also encouraging not to bring all these chemicals and pesticides into the farmlands, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first thing that I would recommend, there's a fantastic website called hempsupporter.com, and it's part of a larger hemp lobbying group that works very closely with our congressmen and congresswomen to kind of get some of the hemp industry's agendas kind of pushed forward, and really just, I think a large part of what they do is just educating various individuals on the power of hemp, and kind of bringing that to light. but I would go to Hemp Supporter, and I'll certainly talk with Jonathan Miller, who is running that, about potentially putting some type of petition together. And they do a really good job. You basically can go on the website, and so for example, this 2018 Farm Bill making sure that hemp language was included, they make it very simple to find the correct representative and actually send a letter through their website. And I think once legalization happens, which should be happening relatively soon, because the two different farm bills were signed and agreed to in early August, the House version and the Senate version. And right now they're in this kind of reconciliation where, the two bodies are getting together and identifying, what needs to change in both bills so that it can actually pass. And so that's actually happening. So fortunately, we're past that point of making sure hemp legalization, or we should be past that point where hemp legalization needs to be addressed. But now it's the next steps, like the organic certification, and kind of clarity, where with the FDA and things like that. So go to hempsupporter.com, educate yourself just in general about hemp and how it's moving through the political world. And I can reach out to Jonathan and potentially put together a petition for, specifically organic certification now that we're looking at a larger scale legalization.
Absolutely. Very cool. Can you share some stories of success of your customers? So you guys have been selling this for what, just over a year now?
In a retail standpoint to directly to consumer, yeah, just about a year and a half. So, kind of starting to make products at a small scale and kind of feeding them out, and then, really selling in bulk. Yeah, just about a year and a couple months. So it's gone by really quick. The two stories that really stand out to me that I think when we realized that we were on to something, one was we had a good friend that was suffering from severe Parkinson's, and we had at the time basically, we're using CBD oil, where it was just a pure CBD and oil in a tincture with MCT, so there wasn't anything else in it. And we had given it to him just to see what would happen. And this is totally anecdotal, and I just want to be very clear that we're not claiming that our CBD cures Parkinson's, but the video that was sent back to us was pretty astounding. And I would certainly be the first to say that his Parkinson's was far from cured, but having someone not be able to really stand and walk around and actually see them have some control of their motor functions, and kind of see just the general smile on their face was, wow. I think one, CBD really does have the impact that I think it can have. That was kind of our first inclination, and this was before we even had a website or anything. It was just us kind of trying and giving it to family and friends because it had been requested. That was really cool, and that was something that I think changed the course of this company and saying, look, at some point we're always going to be selling retail products to consumers, but getting into maybe those more specific disease states and doing the proper clinical research and really understanding the right dosing was something that was kind of put into the back of our minds. And so right now we're actually doing clinical research with a medical university in the United States, and that really was the catalyst for that. The more lighthearted one, I would say, the other example, and I always get, I think when you look at clinical research, you're always subjected to a placebo effect, right? Especially when you tell someone, hey, this is going to make you feel better or less stressed out. People want to believe that, right? And because that is a neurological condition to start, I think there is an opportunity for placebo. When you give it to a pet, though, they don't necessarily know what they're getting, right? They have no expectations. And we had a customer that had been taking the CBD and had started giving it to her pet golden retriever, and the golden retriever's name was Goldie, which I guess is not a very creative name, but a very appropriate name. And the Goldie had went from not being able to really leave the house to basically the video that was sent to us was her bounding across a stream on the walk that they used to go on when she was a much younger dog. And that, one, the owner obviously being pretty emotionally moved to kind of see her companion come back, but two, actually saying, look, we can be pretty confident that the placebo effect was removed or eliminated because an animal certainly doesn't understand what it's taking or not taking, was just really cool to see. And, I think that's where we get our motivation every day. Is every day people call in and just one, just to thank us, but to kind of give their feedback and their stories, and they certainly aren't shy on suggestions as well on how to be better. But that's what's really fun. And when we started this company, we were operating kind of the call center out of my living room, and seeing those calls kind of come in and taking them, and being the person that was kind of helping trying to start that retail side of it has always stuck with me. And we'll do things now, and I think it's somewhat out of selfishness, where we'll let the whole customer service department go out to lunch and all the owners will hop on the phone and take calls for an hour and a half. And that's just a lot of fun, because you always get these crazy stories and people that are just fired up and were so skeptical, but tried it almost so that they could prove to their friends and family that it wouldn't help them, and it ended up helping them. So that's just a lot of fun, and it seems like the stories continue every day.
So what happened to the man with Parkinson's? Did he feel like he kept taking it and he kept noticing that it supported him and having less Parkinson's symptoms? How did that work out in the long term?
Yeah, so we can say confidently. So I won't say his name, but I'm certainly going to send this podcast. He is continuing to use Medterra products. We actually give him the products, so he doesn't pay for them. And just like I said, because of the regulatory landscape, I can't claim to say that we're the reason. His symptoms seem to be improving considerably, but he certainly seems to be very excited to get his Medterra package on a regular basis. So yeah, he's an active part of the Medterra family, which is really cool.
So I understand that we can't make claims that you because you sell the product, you cannot make a claim that it heals something. But if you were a doctor and this wasn't your company, you could say, I've seen CBD, reverse Parkinson's, because you weren't making a profit. But because the FDA doesn't want a company that makes a supplement, profits from it, to also then say that it cures something, that's a problem. But you can make structure function claims. So you can say it supports the structure and function of the nervous system, or it supports, better sleep, or, because you're not talking about a disease. But in terms of this Parkinson's man, let's say did he miraculously no longer have any symptoms of Parkinson's, or is he still having symptoms of Parkinson's, but they're like more manageable?
Yeah, I think they're much more manageable. And I think that, every individual is different. And, I would say, I could say with confidence that the life that he was living maybe a couple of years ago and what he's doing now is very different. And you touched on it exactly. And to be completely honest, I actually am a relatively large proponent of the FDA regulating how people make claims, because at the end of the day, there's always, we were talking about it prior, right, with government and financial interest, right? If someone has a financial incentive to say something, then that could potentially jeopardize the reasoning or their motivation to saying that. And so as a company, we try and be as clear as possible about not making those claims. And right, you can make structure function claims, right? Helping. So we've got a CBD supplement that has melatonin with it. And so, yeah, we can say that it helps support healthy sleep cycles. But we'd be really careful to not touch on things like Parkinson's and cancer and depression and anxiety. One, because I think the FDA looks at those at a much higher level, right? The risk of it not being effective or effective, there's a level of consequence. But it also forces us as manufacturers to sponsor and spend money on doing clinical research to either validate our claims or disprove them. And I think for the industry overall, we're going to be much better off when this goes from anecdotal evidence to where we can look and say, hey, look, there was significant amount of clinical research for this specific disease state. This was the range and dosing, whether that's by body type or by individual kilogram. That's just better for everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it eliminates the stigmatism and kind of the mystique of something that people are like, I'm pretty sure that's illegal. And now we can say, hey, look, no, we've done clinical research in the United States and this is what we're finding. So I think it just helps everyone else. And I'm actually a supporter of the FDA, regulating and making sure people are staying in their respective lanes.
I agree with you. And I never want to see the FDA regulate supplements. The FDA does not approve supplements. I think that's some people go, well, is this herb approved by the FDA? The FDA doesn't approve herbs. It doesn't approve supplements. That's not its job. And we don't want them to, because they're always going to be lobbied by the pharmaceutical companies to remove the good supplements that help people, because the that's competition for the pharmaceutical companies. So it's a fine line. But yes, I like where the FDA stands now, in that we want to make sure people aren't making these audacious claims that could harm people. Like, wait, these, you know, diet, these diet pills that are some herb that might end up being dangerous, or some, caffeine pill that could be dangerous, and they say it, is the next weight loss pill, or some kind of herb that they say cures cancer, and so someone, is harmed by it because it's not tested, or it's not pure, or, so we have to protect people. We have to protect people, and we have to be clear that we want to use supplements and herbs like your extracts to support the body's ability to heal itself, and to support a healthy body and a healthy life. And we're not looking to cure diseases, because we wouldn't want the FDA to come after us. So I get it. What's the future of your company? I'd love to know, where do you see yourself? Where do you see yourself in 5 years and 10 years? What kind of plans do you have in the pipeline?
Yes, absolutely. So what we're looking at now is really this transformation as a company into a purely end consumer product company, and kind of now taking the approach of, while we recognize there is a need for quality wholesale suppliers, that's not the approach that we want to take. And so we've kind of totally shifted our business model. And where I think is, this really exciting space that we're really or aggressively exploring at Medterra is, look, we know that CBD has this incredible potential. And so two things: one, obviously expanding on the clinical research that we're doing right now as a company, and two, looking at what other potential herbal supplements or herbs can benefit or augment the effects of CBD. So, I think it's all well and good, we, as someone that is the owner of a CBD company, to stand on that CBD platform. But, there's a lot of other things out there that can be really beneficial. And I think it would be silly to say, let's only be a CBD company. Let's be just a wellness company. So we're starting to develop products where we take the really effectiveness of CBD, and we try and find complementary ingredients. So, for example, we have a topical cream that uses arnica as well. And I would believe that a topical CBD cream only would do really well. But if we can then bring in these other ingredients and do, research on those to see how they interact, I think that's really the future. Because at the end of the day, we're not trying to just sell CBD, we're trying to help people. And if including other things into these products actually is what's helping people, then it would be silly for us not to look at that. And then I think the final thing is bringing, kind of just overall understanding to the market. So we as a company are talking with national retailers and getting our products, into just the general public spotlight. And we want to be the company that says, look, not to say marijuana is bad or good, but that we're just very different, right? We're a CBD or a hemp company. You don't have to have any risk or concerns on potentially your job or giving this to children. There's no psychoactive effects. We want to be friendly. We want to be approachable. We want to be accessible at a price point that, this becomes within reach for a lot of Americans and citizens of the world, where they can, potentially give CBD a shot and do it in a manner that they can trust.
Very cool. I'm excited to see the research, all the funding, the funded research that comes out from these universities. That's really, really exciting.
Yes, yeah, that's what gets me fired up, because I think, we'll keep on going back to it, but just having those real results to say it did work or it didn't work, just allows you to be much more comfortable in how you talk about the product and the potential use of it.
Very cool. I want to get into understanding all the different products you have, because you've mentioned like a cream, you mentioned this melatonin sleep aid one and you've mentioned the oral, the tincture. I'd like to talk about all your products just so we understand, because I'm sure someone's going to go, wow, I could really try that one. But first, is there a coupon or a discount that you would be willing to give the listeners for their first purchase?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to set up one specific with the Learn True Health listeners. And so we can put that in the show notes, but let's come up with a specific coupon code.
LTH. I ask all the guests to use LTH, so it's always the same coupon code. Um, that'd be great if you could do that for the listeners, because I know by now they're going like, I gotta try this stuff. So I'd love it when a discount is provided for the listeners. That really makes me happy, because I know that as a company you're giving back, and you're not like 100% money motivated, that you actually want to help people. And I get that about you.
Well, I appreciate it. So we'll set up an LTH coupon, and we can do, like you've got such an educated consumer or audience, I should say. So we'll do LTH, and we'll do it for a 15% discount. We really want to get products in the hands of people that are educated and understanding it, so we can get that feedback. So we'll do a 15% discount with LTH if they use it at the Medterra website to check out.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. All right, so let's go through these products, and so my understanding, they're safe for anyone who takes drug tests, like government workers, or maybe someone who's a recovering alcoholic or recovering drug addict. Can they safely take all of these products and not be worried that they would trip any alarms?
Yes, absolutely. And if anyone has a concern, I think the best thing is to just reach out to anyone that actually would be conducting the drug test. But the drug test typically, unless you're an Olympic athlete, which actually CBD was just removed from that banned substance list, but just making sure that what they're testing for is the delta 9 THC, which is that active psychoactive component. So unless you're a professional athlete in the NFL, for example, that would test for the whole cannabinoid profile, which we believe they're changing relatively soon to remove CBD. Yes, they're typically testing for delta 9 THC, and just confirm that with whoever would potentially take the drug test. But for most consumers, that's 100% good to go. There's obviously no THC in our products, and that eliminates the risk.
Okay, great. And so you ship to anywhere in the United States, but you also ship abroad. Are there any countries that you can't ship to?
So, we were working very closely with those government agencies. So we actually ship throughout all of Europe. So we're setting up a distribution center to facilitate the European demand that will actually be just outside of Amsterdam. But yeah, we ship into every European country right now. We cannot ship, unfortunately, to Canada, and it's not because Canada is against CBD. I think they're just protecting their domestic farmers and making sure that they're not facing international competition. And then we are shipping. We're the second CBD company, I believe, to receive a license to export into Japan. And so we're starting to work on getting the right regulations for the Asian markets as well as the South American markets. But if you're in Europe or Japan, you're certainly in luck, and hopefully that list is continuing to grow.
Interesting about Canada. So I guess if you wanted to, if you got enough demand, Canadian demand, you could open up another branch of your company in Canada and just use their hemp.
That's right, and we're actually exploring that option as we speak. So yes, that that would be the way to do it. You're exactly right.
Very cool. Well, it is very exciting. You're at the forefront of an industry that is just in its infancy. This should be, 50 years ago we should have been having this conversation, but at least it happened, and I can't wait to see where it goes. So tell us about your products right now. Just give us the list of the different products and the benefits that people have seen with them.
Sure. So the first product that we launched with was the tincture. So that, I think, is the most familiar form for everyone and when they think of CBD. So it's the CBD isolate, and then we blend it into an MCT oil blend that we derive from organically grown coconuts. The next kind of iteration of that were gel capsules. So people really enjoyed taking the tincture, but they wanted something that was a little bit more transportable or just simply easier to take. So we've concentrated that oil, and now we sell gel capsules that have 25 and 50 milligrams of CBD in them at those various strengths. From there, we've started really kind of playing around with including new ingredients with CBD, which is where we get really excited about. So we are selling a melatonin sleep tablet, so that has 25 milligrams of CBD and then also has melatonin in it. to aid with, falling asleep and supporting that healthy sleep cycle. We know, from the research that CBD actually is not, does not actually put you to sleep, but it can actually help you stay asleep. So the melatonin is effective in supporting that kind of kickoff of the sleep cycle, and then the CBD just kind of helps with just overall relaxed and just generally better rest. From there, we also have our topical cream, which has been a huge hit for athletes and those suffering from more kind of topically or locally based issues. And so that has arnica, menthol, and CBD in it, and we offer that in two different strengths. So there's a 250 milligram topical cream and then a 750 milligram topical cream that we sell. And then we've got some really exciting products that we're just about to launch in the next couple of weeks. We've got a monthly wellness supplement that's designed to help women through that special time of the month. And so we've got ingredients like cramp bark, dung quai, as well as CBD in that. And that's a supplement that you would take orally, as well as what we are referring to as the good morning pill. And that has B6, B12, tyrosine, theanine, as well as some CBD in it to kind of help you get started and kind of kick off your day and have kind of a calm energy, as opposed to the jitters that are typically associated with a lot of caffeine or coffee intake. And then finally, the product that I think I'm the most excited about is the Medterra Plus line, which we were talking about earlier. And that's actually in formulation as we speak, where we've taken a full spectrum CBD distillate, removed the THC, but kept everything else in it, and have put it into a tincture form. And it's got this really great natural kind of earthy taste with it that, all the other flavonoids and terpenes kind of blend in with the CBD, and people are really excited about that. And that really helps those that want the whole plant health.
They call that forest floor.
Forest floor, is that what it is?
No, I watched a wine documentary once, and they were like, oak with hints of forest floor, and I look at my husband, we're both like, forest floor? Since when does the forest floor taste good?
Yeah, that doesn't sound very appetizing.
Yeah, forest floor. So when I take those tinctures, I'm like, the forest floor. Now, what did you take right before our interview to calm you down?
Yes, so I took the highest strength Medterra Plus tincture. So we got some early prototypes in. And so that one's just been sitting on my desk, and I take it, every day at this point. And it's great. It really is. One of the things I think people notice with CBD is that, because it sometimes can be a much more gradual, right? Especially if they're thinking of a THC compound where it's, this immediate psychoactive effect. The CBD is much more gradual, and you almost notice it when you stop taking it versus as you kind of start taking it. So you'll feel more relaxed and you get the benefits, but it's when you kind of stop it and you're like, wow, I feel a lot more sore or a little bit more anxious than usual. What has changed? And you're like, oh, well, I haven't been taking CBD as much or as consistently. So that's what I take on a daily basis. I think I upped it just a little bit prior to this podcast for the boost.
Very cool. So if someone has anxiety, that would be the one to go for?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So any of the CBD tinctures, I think that's a great place to start. And we really recommend people starting with the tinctures, because in each tincture, there's a graduated dropper. And so it's really easy to increase or decrease the amount that you're taking in a measured amount to kind of find your right serving size. And CBD is certainly not cheap, right? And so as someone that's selling these CBD products, I would much rather someone find the right amount to take and not overtake it, right? One from an economic standpoint that, you certainly don't need to spend the money if it's not providing an additional benefit. But two, it also just kind of gives us a much more measured way to find where it's working for people and where it's not.
That reminds me of the story of the Ajax was a company that was suffering. This is many years ago. And they brought in a consultant. The consultant said, I will double your profits. And you need to pay me this much money. And I'm going to double your profits. And they're like, oh my gosh, you're going to double our profits. This is amazing. And okay, here's your check. What should we do? And he goes, increase the hole size. Make the holes twice as large. And they looked at him like, you're crazy. He goes, just do it. Just increase the hole size twice as large. Have you ever used Ajax to clean? You turn it over and half the thing dumps out in your sink. But sure enough, it they people overused the Ajax and they sold more and they made more profits. It's just this really funny story of how consultants can come into a company and say this like one thing and it revolutionized it. But I like that you're saying, I don't want you to dump it out. I want, to use too much of it. I'd like you to find your balance, and maybe you need 3 drops and the other person needs 3 droppers full. Who knows? So we gotta play around with it. But I like that we can dose. Now, what about children? If we have a 7-year-old that's really anxious, could we give her 3 drops, or is this not recommended for children?
Yeah, so we don't place any age restriction on use. That's part of being THC free. So we have children using the products now, and I think that's just at the parent level, right? Especially with a child, or really with anyone, starting low and working your way up, right? And kind of finding that happy balance. They have seen studies where CBD has been effective with children that have kind of various levels of hyperactivity disorder. So it's certainly something that's willing to be tried. And as a company, for us, the biggest thing is, like I said, getting people to try it and understand it. And so look, and if you try, for example, a Medterra product, and on day 29 you've used the whole bottle and you said, look, I haven't seen any effects, send us the empty bottle back and we'll give you your money. It's right now, it's so important for this industry, because it's so nascent, is to just say, look, we want people to figure out if it's helpful or it's not helpful, and if it is helpful, what's the right amount for them. And I think when people come in and they have the wrong expectations or wrong understanding, it just hurts the industry as a whole, especially because we're so new to being a mainstream product that's being served throughout the US.
Is it legal in every state? That is, could a 6-year-old take this, a few drops in it from a tincture, and it be legal in every state?
So there's certain states that have come out. This is what's really interesting about 2014. So they came out and they said, on a federal level, this is fully legal. It's good to go to grow the hemp and then extract it and sell CBD. But just like prohibition, certain states or counties or cities have the right to say, no, we're not going to have it. So in Alabama, for example, you've got dry counties that you're not allowed to sell alcohol in. Certain states have raised their hand, and what ends up happening is they raise their hand and say, look, we don't want to have CBD sold in this state, and that opinion is usually quickly overturned. No one's actually put into a state law that CBD is illegal. It's usually like the state attorney coming out and saying, no, we're not going to allow CBD, based on my interpretation of law, and that usually gets quickly overturned. So we saw that in Indiana. They came out and said, no, we're not going to allow this. And I think it was about a month or 2 months where they, based on the demand and the pressure, they reversed it. I believe Iowa right now is placing some type of ban on it, or government officials come out and said, we're not going to allow it. We still ship to Iowa. So we ship to all 50. Every week we'll ship to at least one customer in all 50 states, just based on the demand. So we've continued to supply it, and until we hear otherwise, we're not. Like I said, there's been no formal government or state law that's been put in place to outlaw CBD. And until that happens, then we're going to move forward and press onward. I think with the 2018 legalization that we're looking at, any of those somewhat rogue government officials will probably change their opinion, obviously for the better, and it would be smooth sailing from that point on.
And to help that, we want to go to that website to support hemp. What was that website
That's
again?
Right. It's hempsupporter.com.
That's right, hempsupporter.com. We want to go there and have our voices be heard and help to support this 2018. Is it going to be on a ballot anywhere, or is it just within the Senate, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it's right now as part of the 2018 Farm Bill. Just like they did in 2014, they've carved out a very special section for hemp. And it basically makes hemp permanently legal, is very clear on CBD extracts being legal for sale domestically and internationally, and just kind of cleans up a lot of the language that the research pilot program somewhat vaguely touched on, and makes it a lot more concrete. The way that the Farm Bill works is, so in the House, they pass their own version, and the Farm Bill touches on a lot of things just beyond hemp, right? food subsidies, subsidies for farmers, food stamp appropriation. It touches on a wide variety of things. Hemp is just one of the provisions that's within it. So the House passed a version that didn't have any hemp language, but the Senate version had very clear and very favorable hemp language. Right now, the House and the Senate have elected representatives to kind of reconcile the formal bill. And at that point, obviously everyone is pushing for hemp to be included in the unified bill, which it has. That part is passed, and now they're just deliberating on the other provisions. And once everyone agrees on the final formal 2018 farm bill and it gets signed, then that specific hemp provision also goes live and makes hemp permanently legal. So it has to be signed by September 30th to continue those subsidies and provisions. They can extend it, so our expectation is either September 30th or sometime by mid-October the final bill will be signed and passed into law.
Oh, geez. So that's very soon. So everyone needs to go to hempsupporter. Is it .com?
Yes.
Okay. I was thinking it might have been .org, but it's hempsupporter.com. We got to go there. We need to look for the petition so that we can let our government know that is what we want. That we want this to like just be fully legalized. Because there's just so many benefits, and it's kind of ridiculous that it ever was illegal in the first place as far as hemp goes. You know what I mean? It's just completely ridiculous. It's not harming anyone. It's only helping everyone. In fact, not having it be a crop has been harming the environment and harming us because we can use it in replacement of cutting down forests. Much of the cutting down of the forest can be replaced with hemp. They've discovered with building materials and so on. So yeah, just so many benefits. It's kind of ridiculous, but fingers crossed. I'm really excited. The melatonin, can you tell us what kind of form of melatonin? Is it synthetic or naturally derived?
It is synthetically derived, and so we get that from a pharmaceutical manufacturer, okay. And then we combine it with our CBD.
Great. And then the arnica, is that homeopathic or is it herbal?
It is herbal.
Cool. My favorite thing with herbal arnica is also calendula. Not sure if you looked into adding that, but those two together are pretty awesome for skin irritation. But
fantastic.
Yeah, there's a bunch of things you could just go. There's a whole world of things you can add to creams to help the skin, as you know. I'm really excited to try some of your products, especially the creams. That always fascinates me. I don't have any pain, thank God, knock on wood right now, but it's always, I love filling my medicine cabinet up with things. So if I have a headache or a sprained my ankle or whatever it is, or someone in my household has something, we can run to the medicine cabinet and grab the cream or the homeopathic remedy or the herbal remedy and use that instead of the pharmaceutical based ones.
Absolutely. And we'll be sending you a lot of products. Don't worry.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. I'll let my listeners know how I like them. I'll definitely share them with my family as well. I have some family members in pain, so I'm always looking to help them as well. Jay, this has been a lot of fun. You've been a great participant. I kind of challenged you a bit. Is there any correlation between taking this cannabis and becoming more intelligent? Because you've been very intelligent in this interview, well spoken in this interview. I'd like to see those studies. I think we'd all take it then.
Well, I really appreciate it. It's always good to have these discussions where we go really in depth, because I think the further we go into it and making sure that everyone is understanding it, not superficially, but the true meanings of how certain things have passed and come to be, and how we can make sure that we don't repeat those mistakes, and also how it can impact their daily lives is really important to us. So thank you for asking those questions, and certainly like being challenged. And the intelligence comment I will be sure to relay to the other co-founders of Medterra.
Maybe do an IQ test and then take a bunch of CBD and do it again and see what happens. Now, you had told me that there's a way to incorporate CBD into our diets. What would be the benefit of that?
So it's just, so we know that CBD can be very effective, especially with GI issues and just overall wellness in the body. And so we do sell a CBD isolate on our website. So if people are looking to potentially incorporate it into smoothies or into their cooking, one of the individuals that we do work with, Carrie, who I've been on her podcast, Clean Eating Carrie, she's done a lot of really cool recipes to include CBD into little granola bars as well as just kind of overall meals. It just makes it one, I think, just a little bit easier to access for people that don't necessarily want to kind of take gel capsules on a continual basis. The other thing is we believe that the other oils in the food help with the bioavailability of the CBD. So cooking with it actually is not a bad idea. With anything that might have some lipids in it. So it's another way of bringing it into your body and maybe potentially, preparing it for a family and making sure everyone's getting their dose of CBD.
Does it help with nausea? Say if someone has gone through chemotherapy or if someone has, I know extreme anxiety can cause nausea because the stress response shuts down the digestion. And so, or in pregnancy, there's a lot of nausea because the hormones affect the digestion. And so in those instances, would cooking with CBD be beneficial?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So general nausea has seen, an improvement with the intake of CBD as well as other cannabinoids. So absolutely. And, if that's, look, if you take a smoothie every day and that's just an easy way for you to remember and, put, maybe 10 or 20 milligrams of CBD in that smoothie and just kind of make it part of your daily routine. That's where I think a lot of people see effects, as CBD builds in the system as you continually take it. That's where I think people really find success with it. So, making sure that it's in your daily regimen and not something that you take once a month seems to be a much more effective way. And so if you've got general GI issues that are more systemic then, or just general nausea, then yeah, I think, from a chemotherapy, then you could really have some success there.
Is it safe to take while pregnant?
That's the one thing. So, there have been no studies that would indicate that it would be an issue, but that's just something that I think, pregnancy is such a delicate thing and there's so many things going on that would be something that we would just recommend talking with, a physician that's a lot more familiar with pregnancy. Pregnancy and doing studies on, new compounds is always a very touchy kind of delicate thing. And so I just haven't seen anything that would indicate that it would be bad, or we really have no reason why it would be, but it's just something that I would have a conversation with, a medical professional. That's really the only condition where we say, look, let's just make sure we're getting the right opinion on this.
Because the CBD interacts with the receptors in the nervous system, does the body recognize it as a foreign thing, or does the body see it as the same substance that it makes itself?
Right. So I don't believe that there'd be any reason as to why, because of the endocannabinoid system just being in existence, why the body would react or think it was a foreign substance, unless there was some type of specific allergy that the individual was suffering from, because it is produced internally, like you said.
And because we've seen so many people find relief with anxiety, how is there a specific way to use CBD oil to help someone gain relief from anxiety, like taking it every morning or taking it 3 times a day, or sort of walk us through the best way to set up a routine for taking CBD, especially if someone has anxiety or stress or depression or those kind of things that they want to help mitigate?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's just the first thing is just making sure that whatever routine that you have, that you're not making it a special thing that you have to go out of your way. So, we've got a lot of people that they'll take it, in the morning and then they go and brush their teeth, right? And it just becomes part of that daily habit. Or right before they go to sleep, they'll take the oil, because people tend to have so much more success with it when they take it continually as opposed to sporadically at higher levels. Someone that's dealing with anxiety, which is, a much more kind of chronic issue as opposed to an acute issue, that's, I think, where you can really see the benefit of just being consistent. So, if you put it in your medicine cabinet when you go to brush your teeth at night, or before in the morning, then that's a great place. If you're looking to incorporate it kind of throughout your day, then maybe you just put it on your kitchen counter. So when you eat lunch, I think that's a great way of doing it as well. It's what we found, especially anecdotally with our customers. It's just doesn't really seem to make a difference as to when you take it. It's just that you continually take it and are consistent. And a lower level is much better consistently than a higher level occasionally.
Now we'll wrap up today's interview shortly, but I thought of another question I have to ask, and that is, what's the difference between your company and other companies out there? I know that I believe Amazon was selling CBDs and then they stopped, or because I had a friend that was an Amazon seller and he has like an entire warehouse full of stuff he can't sell on Amazon right now. So, and there's so much concern about quality. You touched on that some companies might not even contain any CBD, or might contain, heavy metals or pesticides or all that. But what do we need to look at to make sure that what we're buying is healthy and pure? We should look at what your website and the studies. Do you feel that your company is the best one out there because you spend so much attention to detail at every step of the process and test every step of the process?
Yes, and I think that's what really makes us unique, especially, if we're looking at just the pure CBD products that don't have any other things in it that are unique to Medterra. But if we just look at our CBD tincture, we feel that we are leaders in the industry. One, from a pricing standpoint, we try to make our CBD as affordable as possible. And so typically we're a little bit less or a lot less than some of our competitors as far as pricing goes and per serving. But it's also that dedication to consistency and compliance. When we were a wholesaler, that's all that we could stand on. So we didn't have a brand. We were really selling a commodity at that point. And so the way to make yourself or differentiate yourself from your competitors that were selling similar based commodities was, okay, well, how compliant were you are? What is your scalability? Are you doing testing the right way? Can we ensure that every batch is the same? We've taken those same principles and just have applied it and extended it into our retail line. And so a customer knows that every time they buy a Medterra tincture, it's going to be the exact same, and that they know that if they have any questions as far as testing goes, that this month is going to be no different than the next month in getting those test results. And when we started it, we were an e-commerce company, and so customer support is so essential to running a successful online company. And so when you call the Medterra customer support line, you're going to get someone that'll actually answer the phone and is happy to stay on the phone if it's 30 minutes or 45 minutes to answer all your questions. And if you want to call in 10 times because this is such a new industry and you've got all these questions, we're happy to do it, right? We're not a voicemail. We're not just an email reception where we'll send you back a response in 5 days. We take a lot of pride in interacting with our customers and in making sure that they're educated and engaged. And if they ultimately come to the conclusion that there's a better CBD company for them, then we encourage them and we're happy to take the products back. And we just want everyone to find success in CBD because that ultimately impacts us as well.
I know that some people can go to dispensaries to purchase stuff like this, but are you going to be in dispensaries in the future?
So in other states, we are in dispensaries. It really is only in California, and that's just based on the fact that we're hemp-derived versus marijuana-derived.
Got it.
And so the CBD that's sold in dispensaries, for example, in California, can't be sold across state lines and can be only sold in California. So as a company that, we're in all 50 states and are selling internationally, that's obviously something that we couldn't change course on, and we had to cater to a much larger audience than that. So it is unfortunate that we're not in those medical dispensaries, but for I think our general consumer base, it's obviously better.
But a dispensary in the state of Washington, for example, could sell your CBDs?
Yes, I actually believe we're in a fair amount of Washington dispensaries.
Oh, very cool. But the easiest way would be to go to the website and use the coupon code LTH to get 15% off, and also give you guys a call and have a nice chat with one of your people and berate them with wonderful questions.
That would be my recommended route, 100%. Nice. Make sure you call in. That's the biggest thing, because once you're educated, then you know what to expect, and that just makes you a much better consumer and a much better experience.
Have you seen or have you heard of that taking CBD actually helps to reduce addiction? I know one of the people I interviewed about this. He said that those who feel addicted to pot, and I know that it's a controversial topic because people go, well, there's nothing addictive in pot, but people do find themselves kind of stuck to it. craving it, wanting it. And when we take CBD, because it floods the neurology with these cannabinoids, people have seen anecdotally that their craving for their desire for smoking pot goes significantly down because their body's sort of need is saturated. Have you heard of this?
We have. So we've heard stories of people that like in very acute scenarios, might have consumed too much THC and then have actually taken CBD to kind of bring them to a much calmer state and a little bit more acceptable state of mind. And so we do know that they do interact with the same receptors, so that makes sense that they are competing against each other for those receptors. And then from an opioid standpoint, they also kind of trigger the same receptors in the body and kind of have similar mechanisms of action. And so we have seen people that have taken CBD that were potentially addicted to opioids or looking to maybe reduce their opioid intake. That's just one thing you've got to be really, really careful with in working with a physician, because obviously withdrawing too quickly can actually have some pretty serious health implications if you've been taking these opioids for a significant amount of time. So yes, we have seen the potential, and there's a fair amount of research showing that CBD could be really effective in helping these individuals that are addicted to these various compounds. There's something to be really careful with. But from a marijuana standpoint, yes, we do know that people usually keep their CBD kind of ready in case they might have consumed a little too much.
Yes, I have heard of that as well. So if someone's ate too much brownies or something, then now they're too high, they can take some CBD tincture, and the CBD then sort of steals the place of the THC in the brain and calms the person down. I actually did interview a doctor who helps patients with cannabis, and she's in California as well. And so it's interesting that you mentioned that it's not dangerous for someone who's on opioids to take CBD. It's dangerous for them to take CBD and then just stop the opioids altogether, without sort of slowly getting off of them with the assistance of their doctor, because that's what's dangerous. Not taking the CBD is dangerous. It's dangerous to stop cold turkey some medications, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
because they compete. So even if, one of the concerns is too, we have people that are taking a fair amount, and if they don't, let's say they're not even weaning themselves off and they start taking a significant amount of CBD, then the body, those actually could compete with the opioids and create some issues. So we have people that, are taking specific painkillers that are doing that. We actually had a really interesting story. A lady called in and was saying, I'm having nervousness and shakes and sweating. Is that a typical symptom of taking your CBD? And we said, no, that's, to be honest, that's the first time. You definitely should talk with your physician. And what we ended up finding with the physician was that, yeah, she had actually quit cold turkey and was having withdrawal symptoms, which, is very dangerous. So, you've got to do this in a measured way, because the consequences can be very real.
So the CBD was so effective at eliminating her pain that she stopped taking her pain meds.
Well, we can't say that.
I know.
That was her
That was
decision
her
on how. Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Jay, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been great. Is there anything that you'd like to say to wrap up today's interview, or anything I didn't cover that you really feel the listener should know before we wrap up today's interview?
No, actually, I have to commend you on taking such a wide approach and really touching all these topics. It's exciting that the general public is finding interest in this and educating themselves. And if anyone has any questions, I would just say just be happy to reach out to us at support@medterracbd.com, and we'll answer any questions you need, or give us a phone call.
Absolutely. And of course, the links to everything we talked about today are going to be in the show notes of today's podcast at learntohealth.com. Use that coupon code LTH, get your 15% off, and then email me, Ashley at LearnTrueHealth, and let me know what you think of his CBD stuff. I'm always an open-minded skeptic. So I'm like, on one hand, I'm like, I'm going to be skeptical until I see the results, right? Show me the pudding. But I'm open-minded enough to obviously believe in it because of the research, because of everyone's experiences. So what really is icing on the cake for me is hearing back from the listeners after they've experienced their results from you. And of course, I'll then share those on the show as the listeners write me with this information. whether their experience, whether it worked or not for them, or what their experience was. Let's the proof's in the pudding. So let's start taking the stuff and seeing how it works for us. And I'm excited to hear back from listeners. Jay, it's been a real pleasure to have you on the show, and thank you so much for advocating for herbal medicine, for natural based, plant based, medicinal products that really help people to gain the quality of life they're looking for.
Well, thank you for having me on, Ashley. I really appreciate it.
Are you looking to optimize your health? Are you looking to get the best supplements at the lowest price? For high quality supplements and to talk to someone about what supplements are best for you, go to takeyoursupplements.com, and one of our fantastic True Health coaches will help you pick out the right supplements for you that are the highest quality and the best price. That's takeyoursupplements.com. takeyoursupplements.com. That's takeyoursupplements.com. Be sure to ask about free shipping and our awesome referral program.